Welcome to the Pool Nation podcast, where it's all pool talk. And we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. We talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. Now let's welcome your host, with over a decade of industry insider experience and still the reigning champion of Marco Polo, Edgar De Jesus, and his co-host, John JJ Flawless, the fastest netter in the West, and Zach the Pool Boy Nicholas.
Welcome to the Pool Nation Live podcast with myself, your host, Edgar De Jesus. And yes, I am the reigning champion of Marco Polo, along with John, JJ Flawless, the fastest netter in the West, and the famous Zach, the Pool Boy Nicholas. This week, we're going to be diving into the business side of what we do. And specifically, we're going to talk about profits. We're going to be talking about the different things that you need to be able to figure out to tell how profitable your business is. Like Mama Flawless likes to say,
show me the money.
Show me the money. That's right, baby. Show me the money. We are talking the money side of your business in this episode, and it's going to be a great one. I want to welcome everyone to our live podcast, the podcast where it's all pool talk, and we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. And yes, we will talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. Before we get started today, guys, I want to thank our sponsors for this podcast, Ultimate Pool Tools, Pool Invoice, PoolmanUniversity.com. We want to thank them for their continued support. I also want to thank our newest sponsor that will be joining us soon, and that is Hasa. We're excited to have you guys on. Thank you so much for your support. Zach, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a good week. I can't believe it's January already, and we're at the end of it. And I mean, in just a few weeks, we'll start climbing into our busy season. So we're over here getting prepared for that. I just want to say that I'm excited to do this episode because understanding your numbers will really show you, will really allow you to go into your phase of growth. And as I've said before, growth costs money. So it's important to understand whether or not you are making any profit to be able to support that growth.
Yeah. And I've been having that conversation with a couple of people, Zach, this week that, March is around the corner. We're at the end of January. So we're going to be kicking into
busy season. We're going to get started into our busy season like it hasn't already been busy.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't stopped. So, John, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Actually kind of excited. We got a little bit of rain. This last week and a half, we've had some rain, but unfortunately we had a little bit of wind that came with it, but we definitely need rain. I know I've said it before on the podcast. Out here, we get less than 3 inches of rain a year total. So it's not a lot of rain. And I think we got it all in the month of January. So I think we're done with it for the rest of the year, but I'm excited it came.
So this week you had rain and winds?
Yeah, we had rain and winds. And it wasn't crazy winds. Some of the other guys in Southern California, I really feel for them because they got hit super hard again. And it was like deja vu because it was like the same thing that happened like about a month or two ago. Remember when we were talking about it? But they just got wrecked. And we had some high winds for maybe about an hour or two, but it wasn't sustained. So some pools were destroyed and some pools were as if the winds never hit. It was kind of weird, but we had our work cut out for us. And but this storm that just came through, not much winds with it. So that's a good thing.
I saw some of the pictures on Instagram of some of the guys, Diamond Image, a whole palm tree just completely in the middle of the pool. Like right. It just uprooted it and boom, in the middle of the pool. And then some of the other with trampolines in the pool. It was kind of crazy. Hey, I want to thank everyone that sent me notes about my daughter. I freaking love it. So last week we kind of shared my craziness, and some of the guys out there and the girls sent me some notes, and some of them were joking about it. Some of them shared some great experiences. So I want to say thank you to all of you guys that messaged me out there. It's a little scary today. She's getting a car. So it's just the drama continues, Zach.
Keeps piling on.
It just keeps coming my way, man. So, John, let's talk about our next podcast idea because you came up with it, and I think it's a great idea. I think you need to share.
Mama came up with it, and she told
Mama.
me. Yeah, she came up with it. So she gave me. She's like, "Oh, we're thinking about different ideas and stuff," and she's like, "Why don't we do this?" And I'm like, "Wow, it's a great one. I can't wait to send it to the boys." So everyone, in like a week or two, we're going to do a WTF episode. It's going to be a crazy story podcast. Things that we've encountered during our days as pool guys and gals. We want to do something that's a little bit different and fun. So we want you to either call in into the podcast or share those crazy stories with us. You can send them to us via email or Instagram, and we will share those here live on the podcast. I have one that I'm going to share that no one is going to be able to beat, and it is absolutely crazy. So guys and girls, start sending them in, and we will share or let us know so you can call in and share with us. I'm really looking forward to it.
Zach, he kind of sounded confident about that one with his story. Huh? I'll tell you what. Don't tell me your story.
I don't think I told Zach about it. Right? Zach hasn't heard.
I don't know. It's going to be a surprise.
Well, let's do this. Let's keep all of our stories to ourselves because I think I have some good ones. But and again, John always comes up with these great stories. So I don't know. Maybe he'll kind of whoop us with the stories as usual, right, Zach?
We'll see.
Guys, a lot of great things this week. That Instagram live with Bob this week was such a great live. I really enjoy those because he goes into so much detail on the information that we get from him. And we got a letter that he shared with me yesterday, and I wanted to share it because it really is that fuel that to the fire that keeps me, John, and Zach going. So, John, I sent it to you. Do you have it?
I do. I do have it. Yeah. Okay,
I'm gonna have you read it, but I want you to do that deep professional voice that you do. Like,
you guys are crazy.
Let me just clear this. Wait a second. So don't do the mama one where you go, "Hey, baby. Hey, beautiful. How you doing?" Not that one. Let's keep it professional here.
So like this voice. "Hey, Zach, the pool boy. Oh yeah." That better?
That's it.
That's the one. Let's go.
All right. Anyways, so here's a letter that we got in, and it says, "Hi, Bob. Just wanted to send a quick thank you email. Took your pool chemistry class last month, and I'm happy to report that I can finally understand pool service and what exactly I've been doing for the last 30 years in business. I really appreciate you taking the time to understand and explain how the elements of water chemistry interact and how I can better my business, then taking the time to get the information to me. Also, thank you for getting out the information on borates. This is not the easiest thing to understand, let alone sell. Took me 6 months to get Pool Corp to bring it into our market, and I finally received my shipment last week. I want to work with local professionals to convince our health department to allow borates for use in the commercial market. Please keep up the good work. Aquatic professionals have waited too long for quality information. Over 30 years, I've grown a pool service and repair company to a 14-person crew, servicing, repairing about 400 commercial and residential pools in the Las Vegas Valley. If you're ever looking for a beta test data or a beta test site or data from the field, please let me know. Thank you again. We appreciate your business. Thank you and have a great day. Larry and Kate Calavan from Calavan's Pool and Spa Service."
That's just such a cool testimonial because I just love it. It's so true that, some of the info that Bob teaches is stuff that you don't learn for a long time. And the other thing, like Edgar said, is the things that you get from listening to Bob when he does the podcast or on the Instagram lives. He talks about the things that you don't get in the training, and he's able to address each question that comes up about a certain situation that someone is going through. So I just really enjoy that because it's just kind of like, that's not in the training, and he can tailor it to that exact situation. Then we can all relate to that. And on the Instagram live, Bob was talking about crypto, and someone was talking about a raccoon problem that they were having. And they asked if the pool can be contaminated from crypto from the raccoons. And then Bob was able to go into the details about how animals can bring crypto into the pool through their fecal matter. And it's just such detailed information that you won't find anywhere else.
Yeah, a lot of that information excuse me, is great. And that's why it's exactly like what Zach is saying. everybody can ask, and then you get a response to your detailed situation or your personal situation that's going on. So I really enjoy doing those. Guys, before we get started, I want to do 2 quick shout outs today. One of them is going to be Jarin from Privilege Pool and Spa out in Hawaii. He called me this week. He was having some issues with a pool that's all tile, and so had some stains on the grout. So we kind of were talking about that, and he reached out. So I wanted to give him a big shout out. Hope you're doing good out there, brother, and keep knocking them out of the park. And the second one goes out to someone that I don't even know if she listens to our podcast, guys, but I follow her on Instagram. And that's going to be Shauna from Purdy Pools out in Scottsdale, Arizona. She did a post where she kicked butt in 2020. She started with 32 pools and she picked up 40 and hired a freak a tech. I can't speak today, guys. She hired a tech. I'm like, how freaking cool is that? That's where I was going. I was going to say, how freaking cool is that? And I tied it into my hired tech. So anyways, so big shout out to her. Keep killing it, girl. John, Zach, did you guys see that? I know John saw it. Zach, did you see the live that I did on the Hayward van trip?
I didn't see it.
What?
No, I didn't see it. When was it?
It was Wednesday. So I go down to the SCP and I'm pulling into the SCP and there's, the Hayward van there, but then I'm walking in and I see Dylan from Dylan's Pools out here. And then he's talking to Hasa Dave, and Hasa Dave is the guy that's in charge of all Texas for Hasa. So got there and then they had the van, the Hayward van that has all of their equipment in it. So in the back, they had the heater and some other equipment. They had the cleaner that we talked about with Kevin Bowling. And you walk into the van and they have like all the automations. They have the new automations. They have the salt cells. They have the variable speed pumps. They have the older automations that are now you're going to be able to kind of retrofit. And they have it hooked up to Google, and you can ask the pool for temperature and it tells you the temperature. You can kind of change the lights. You can, the old one, when you used to press for the lights, remember it used to like click through every light until it got to the one that you wanted. So it kind of cycled through. Now it's just you press the button and it's automatic. It just does one flick and boom, it brings up the color that you want. And then the other cool thing with the lights is you can actually dim them. So you can make them stronger or lower. So it's kind of neat going through the whole van. And then they had some of the cat set up for the commercial pools. So they had one of the commercial guys there, just a lot of great technology. And it was kind of neat to watch, John, kind of what you've talked about, the industry catching up with technology. And, some of those panels nowadays, that new panel that they have, it can handle 16 pumps. And then if you want more, you can add another add-on to even handle more pumps. So it's crazy.
Yeah, they brought the van down to our shop. I think it was in town for the Southwest show last year. And so we were fortunate enough to have them bring it down one morning. We had the whole team out there. We got to go through it. They had if I remember correctly, there was a TV on the side and they did a whole training. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a really big one. And they have the MTV tour that they're doing. So we're going to post on the Poolman University all the dates and where they're going to be, because especially out here in Dallas, they're going to be at a whole bunch of places in Dallas and Oklahoma. And then they'll go out to Arizona and stuff like that. But the guys that were there were just great. They're so cool and just kind of explain everything. I even shot some videos so that we can post those on the Poolman University. So they probably saw me and said, oh, we'll just kind of explain this. And next thing you know, I have them all filming videos. And we even did some in Spanish too. That was kind of cool. I also bumped into Hasa Dave there. Hasa's doing a training for Bob Larry. And that's going to be February 20th in Flower Mound. And that one's going to be in person and on Zoom. So they can handle up to 30 people live because of the COVID. So we'll add a link to that as well. And then the next thing is Bob's next training. So he has one obviously this Saturday, but the next one is going to be February 27th. And I think if the people haven't taken that one, they should take that one, because it sounds like Bob's going to do that one, but then he's not going to do one for a while. So if you guys are out there thinking and you want Bob to be the one that's teaching the class, he'll have that one on February 27th, and we'll obviously talk about it.
We got 2 people doing February 27th, so we're ready to rock.
That's cool, because he did say that it's he's going to do that one, but then it'll be a while before he does another class. So, and then the other thing that we want to talk about is the waterway training. John, do you have that? Do you have that with the paperwork that they sent us on that?
Yeah. So Waterway, they're doing jet hydraulics and VS pump training. And it's going to cover how the DOE, or the Department of Energy 2021 variable speed mandate, and how it affects you as a pool service company and as a builder. It's a little bit more geared towards builders, but the training topics that they're covering will benefit anybody, from the one poler to the 400 account guy to the 1,000 account girl. The training topics are going to be the DOE 2021 mandate. They're going to talk about in-ground jet hydraulics and VS pumps, proper gunite, jet installation and troubleshooting. They're going to cover waterway, their new products and the history of waterway. And then finally, it's going to be VS pump profitability discussion. They're going to have training in Arizona as soon as February 23rd at 9:30 a.m. at the Marriott. And then they're also going to have a training in Texas, actually 2 in Texas in March. And then also 2 more trainings in Florida in March. Registration fee is $50, but they're going to give you a $100 waterway coupon when you attend. So they're basically paying you to show up. So you'll walk away with a $100 coupon. And then they'll also provide continental breakfast and lunch, which is included. Just like this, any opportunity to go to any training with any manufacturer, anybody who has any kind of quality information, I highly suggest, if you guys are in the area and if you can do it, please send somebody out there so that you guys can get up to speed with the new laws that are coming into play.
So you get $100?
Yeah, they're going to give you a $100 waterway coupon. So ultimately, you pay $50 for registration. They'll give you $100 in coupons that you can use on waterway products. And, Waterway makes more than, they make pumps, they make automation, they make valves, they make fittings, they make anything. So you can spend the money. So you're literally going to be paid free breakfast, free lunch. They're going to pay you basically $50 back, and then they're going to give you knowledge. So it's a win-win situation. It's a no-brainer. You should show.
I think we definitely need to talk to them and talk about all their other products and stuff like that, because shoot, that's a pretty good deal.
Oh, yeah. And Jeanette asked where in Texas.
Yes.
It's going to be over at Grapevine. So it's going to be Embassy Suites by Hilton, by DFW Airport North. And then the other one's going to be at Sheraton North Houston in Houston, Texas. So
I don't think they've ever come to Houston, so I'll definitely be there.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good one. And this is the things that I think a lot of the new pool guys think, oh, well, they're talking about in-ground jet hydraulics and stuff like that, or, proper gunite jet installation. And so they might think, oh, well, that's kind of construction stuff. But those are all the things that you need to get out there and you need to learn so that when you're talking to your customers or you bump into a problem, you now have that knowledge. And this is stuff that you don't kind of get everywhere. So I think that's a great training.
I agree.
I'm looking at it now. I think I'm going to, I don't know, Zach, depending on how things are, maybe I'll go down to Houston.
That's what I'm talking about.
You should. You definitely should.
Yeah. We got to figure out if they're doing one over by John, and then we'll kind of use that as an excuse to get out to see John.
Right? Because why else would you come out and see me, right? No other good reason. From training. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Zach, we'll get out there and play some golf with John.
There you go.
You don't want me to golf with you. That's not good.
I'd rather golf in Texas because there's a lot more acreage and a lot more land, and I think there's a lot less homes to hit. It might be better for me to go out to Texas and actually golf.
Oh, that's funny. So there's actually a really nice golf course here in the town that I'm at, John. So let's come on down. Let's go hit some golf balls. All right, guys, let's get started with today's podcast. We've already been kind of sitting here jibber jabbering. It's been 19 minutes, guys. So let's get started. Let's talk about Mama's favorite word, and that is the word profit. It's not a 4-letter word, Mama, but it's a 6-letter word. So you got bigger bang for your buck. I want to talk about it because I've said it before. This is something that people don't like to talk about. And I think it's something a little bit personal, and I understand it. But guys and girls, this is something that you're going to need to be able to talk about and be good at it. So just as much as you're learning about all the other aspects of your business, you really need to dig deep and become a pro at your numbers. And I want to talk about money. I want to talk about how much money you're making, how much money you're really making. And I want to make you become an expert at your numbers and be comfortable with talking about it. I want to know your number. I probably kind of came out wrong, right? I want to know your number.
Look, I'm just trying to figure out. Look, I'm looking at the chat here, and I keep seeing the support thing that keeps popping up. Who's doing that?
Wait. What? What's coming up?
Look on the chat, on the Podbean chat, and it's, this thing keeps coming up. It says support, send gift. What is that?
I have no idea.
It's Edgar requesting gifts.
You got spam going on.
Eat lunch?
You got spam going on. I don't see any support on mine. Nobody wants to support me. They only want to support me.
We don't see it.
Right, Zach? Okay.
Yeah, you don't see it if you're requesting it. So.
Exactly.
You request it. There you go.
Oh, no. Anyway, so all right, Edgar, I agree 100%. I think we need to talk about profit, right? And we also need to hit on the other things that are related, like cash flow. I think the pool business can be tricky because you can make money, but still not make a profit, or not even make a big enough profit if you do make profit.
Yeah, and it's because we deal in an industry that has such a good cash flow system, so it masks the ability to see how much money you're really making. So you could be in a spot where you're barely making any money, but you can't tell because your cash flow is so good.
Yeah, Zach, we do really deal with an industry that is generous on the cash flow side of it. And I know we've talked about it a little bit, but we might have some new people listening. So can you explain what cash flow is?
Yeah. So basically the way that I look at cash flow is the inflow of money versus the outflow of money, and also the time it takes for the inflow of money in comparison to the outflow of money. You obviously want your inflow to be greater than the outflow, and that's the whole goal, right? That's how we achieve profitability. And you also need to have that good cash flow to have smoother business operations and do things like I keep saying, like be able to afford growth.
Yeah, Zach, I think you nailed this one, because I know that we all want to talk about profits, but this is the first thing you need to understand before we can really get into profits. So here's a quote that has always stuck with me as a business owner. Revenue is vanity, profits is sanity, and cash is king. So think about that for a second. Let's break that down. So revenue is the shiny object, right? Vanity, right? Who cares? I mean, to be honest, who cares how many pulls you do or how many sales you make or the equipment you sell? If you're not making any money off of it, then what's the purpose, right? What's the point? Why are you doing it? Profits is sanity. What we make on every dollar after all expenses. Are you spinning your wheels? Are you working, busting your butt basically for free? Are you losing money? And then cash, right? Cash is king. How much of that profit is in the bank? That's the end game for any business. Keep your eye on the prize. This is a whole purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. How can we better ourselves, educate ourselves, and offer a quality service that demands more?
Yeah, that's such a cool way of thinking of it. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Yeah. I think that's probably going to stick with me forever. So, look, guys, cash is king.
It's true.
And the thing is if money is flowing in, it can mask problems because it rolls over month to month. And you might not have enough money to cover your expenses, but because you have that next inflow of cash, sometimes you're not able to see this. And it's easy to overspend on unnecessary things, or maybe some of them are necessary, but you can't afford it at that time, and you're not able to see that. So, one thing I like to think about is that if you were to push pause right now and let all of that inflow, all of that money come in, and all of the money going out, if you let that settle, would you have a positive number or a negative number at the end of the day? And essentially, that's what we're looking at when we're talking about a P&L statement. When you look at it for a previous time period, you're either left with a loss or a gain. And if you have a gain, then that's awesome because that's obviously the goal. And if you have a loss, then something needs to change. And you're able to do that by either cutting costs or raising prices.
Yeah. And look, what happens is that if you don't track that and you don't try to figure out your profit, you're never really going to know how much money you're making. And obviously that cash flow has a big play in it, because if the money just flows, it allows you to keep your business flowing. You're not really doing the homework to the profit side. You're just kind of masked, like Zach said, by that cash flow. But guys, we have to be honest, after servicing 16 pools, who the hell wants to come home and do paperwork? And I know I hate it, but it's part of the job. And guys, it's something that you have to do in order to be successful in business. You need to figure out that cash flow. You need to figure out those profits if you're really going to be able to say, hey, my business is really successful and cash is king.
And Edgar, like you say, this is one where you need to take that one hat off, right? And put on a different hat to handle this part of the business. If you want to run a business and make sure you're really making money, you need to set yourself up as a true business. And you need to work on it a bit, on a bit of your accounting side, right? Because, there's more to running a business than just doing the front end part of it. There's a lot in the back end. And it's quite a bit of work. Let's not kid ourselves. Guys, sometimes you cannot do it alone, and that's okay. Part of being successful is being able to understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Not only are you doing all your physical labor, but now you have to come back and do more work, the office work. So remember that getting help is okay.
Yeah. And Edgar, you and I have talked about how you guys do it in the hotels and the crazy extent you went through having to track everything and how some of it relates to our industry. Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah. So here's an example. I'll talk a little bit about how we did it in hotels. And you don't have to go into this extreme, but I want the guys to know what that looks like in the bigger businesses, right? So if you look at hotels have each department, and each department has their budget. And that's really how much money they can use on a monthly basis, right? It's kind of their checkbook. But they need to track all of that all the way down to the penny. And I don't want to go too deep into that because that could be an entire live right there, but maybe we'll talk about it soon for the bigger pool companies. But we tracked every tiny expense, and it needed to be tracked live. And what I mean by this is anytime that something was ordered, it was entered into a system, and you had a live immediate cost of those expenses. So you'd have the revenue for the day, and you would have an accurate to the moment number. So I could tell you at any hour of the day what our profit was. And that's really how those big ships are driven, right? When you have that huge operation, then it becomes a lot more work because you have a lot more area. So an example for you, Zach, obviously you've got payroll, you've got overtime, you have all this chemical consumption that's being used. When you're an individual pool guy, it's a little bit easier because you're controlling everything. You know what you bought, you know how long you worked. But as you get into a bigger operation, it's really important that you start to be able to track those things, because all of a sudden, Zach, in an operation like yours, and you probably have had this, is all of a sudden that overtime creeps up. And what it does is it grabs at that profit that you're making, and it just eats that profit away. So that's kind of how it's done in a bigger ship. And I don't think in the pool industry we need to do that, but I think there are some things that we could do that can give us a better advantage to make sure that we're making profit without having to go, really into that extreme. And the goal is to really know your profit and how much you're really making. Like John said, cash is king. That's the number that you want to focus on. Yeah.
And I mean, overtime is something that did creep up on this year. So it's like really the first year that it was like an aha, like, wait a minute. We really need to look at this. And we actually made several changes to our company to be able to, kind of not have so much overtime and control that cost. And so, John, I know you were big in the retail world. How did you guys handle it?
Well, everything was tracked. Okay. Absolutely everything was tracked. Just like what Edgar said, it was micromanagement at its finest. Everything had a cost. How much we purchased a product for, what our landed cost was, which was how much it cost for that item to travel through our distribution channels, gross margin, the difference between cost and what we sold it for, COGS, cost of goods sold, NOP, net operating profit, and finally NOPAT, which was net operating profit after taxes. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of a story, kind of like what Edgar said, about how we did it and how we kind of differed, as far as like how crazy we got into like trying to understand every dollar that came in, or the possibility of every dollar that came in. We have our customers or the count or the heads of how many people that walked through the building, whether it was 1,000 or whether it was 1,500 or whether it was 500 or whatever, depending on the day. And we took our clients or our customers and we divided them into different classes. And this might sound weird or it might not sound PR right or whatever, but there were different groups. Whereas one was like a soccer mom, and one was like a business executive. One was like a family oriented. One was resale for profit, and each person had a dollar amount basically, and it was as far as like, okay, well, this person, whatever their name is, and they had a name for them, whether it was Billy or Barry or whatever. When they walked into the building, you have X amount of people. You normally have 1,000 people that walk in through your door. You're going to have 30 of the Billies that are going to walk into your door. Those 30 Billies are worth approximately $332 or whatever if you close them right and you do this. So when it came down to the way they broke down profits, it was just mind-boggling. And every day was a recap that we would have to do and go through, same as what Edgar was talking about, live instant profits or margins or expenses, and go through our day and analyze it so that we didn't have to wait. Because a lot of times as a pool service company, these P&Ls and income statements and stuff like that, it's kind of foreign to some. It's really important to grasp it and understand what it is and to have one so that you can at least sit down once a month to look at what your expenses are, what money you're making, and where you're bleeding or where you're doing well at, so you know where you need to fix and what you need to improve on or to continue doing. And when you get even deeper into it, I'm not saying that we have the time to do it, but like, bigger corporations like the Marriott or like, big retail giants, what they do is not only they do it monthly, but they do it daily. And if you're able to see a deficit, or if you're able to see an opportunity or something that you can close and fix on day one, then you won't allow it to hurt you on day two. Or opposed to if you wait for 30 days to look at it or 6 months, you've already traveled now 29 days or 5 months worth of bleeding, that you could have stopped a lot earlier if you paid attention to it. We have a lot of things going on and we work really, really hard. It's really important that we take the time to look at these numbers, because this can really make you or break you.
I have a question for you, John. Yeah. So if I was to walk into your store, who would I be?
Billy Bob.
Why are you going to call? Why do I fall under Billy Bob? I'm worth $332.
Yeah, no, Billy Bob.
What about Zach? What would Zach be?
Zach would be the executive.
Yeah. Love it.
Yep.
I thought you were going to say soccer mom, and I was like, what?
No. I was going to say you were going to be the soccer mom.
I want to add, it's kind of crazy to me because I am not personally aware of any companies in our industry that truly apply this. And I mean, I don't know that there are any companies in our industry on that scale as like these massive retailers and stuff, but I have never met or had a conversation with anyone that takes a lot of these principles that you can apply to this industry and use them in their business. And that's something that I try to do every day. I try to learn, from our conversations, Edgar, about the hotel world. I mean, the other night I was taking notes on my notepad, having a conversation with you about budgets. And it's this is stuff that is very applicable to our industry. And as we want to grow these big companies and people talk about having 1,000 pools or 2,000 pools en route, you're going to want to apply these things so that you can monitor the health of your business. So it's just mind blowing to me that our industry is just so old school, and we need to start getting with the times when it comes to this stuff.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I know, Edgar, I know that you're working on a training for the business side, so maybe you can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. And here's what I'm thinking. So I take my experience, obviously, from the hotels and Zach. Yes, I love listening to John's story because it's a totally different business, and never in 1,000 years would I thought that they would kind of come in and kind of categorize people as to who they are and kind of what they spend. But it's true. Those are trends, and those are things that you could drill down and figure out what they are. So, I love all this kind of stuff. But sometimes for somebody that hasn't been in those environments or had that experience, it can kind of become overwhelming. And I think for us, there's things that we could do for the pool industry that would be really simple that the pool guys and the pool girls could do, right? Because if you're a person that does 50 pools, you probably don't need to go into that much detail because you're kind of managing everything. But Zach, as you start to get into a situation like yours, where you have 10 guys, then things start to change and you have to be able to have your finger, on the pulse. But let me explain how what I think correlates into what we're doing from the hotel side. And so I'm going to share some of the things that the small businesses, the individual pool guys can do to make sure that their profits are headed in the right direction without having to, do tons and tons of extra work. You should do it if you can, but if you can't, I'll share some of those. So, Zach, what I was talking about, and I'm going to tell you how I see we did in the hotel industry and how we apply some of those into our industry. And this is going to be one of the core focuses of the business training that we're going to be doing and that we're working on. So I know everyone is not going to run a full profit and loss because they might think it's too much work. And I think, what I'm going to talk about will give you some tools to help you figure out some of those things that you should be focusing on to focus on that profit. So if I was to compare hotels to pools, there's some things that you could use to really know how much money you're making. So I'll give you an example. In hotels, there's two main things that we looked at all the time. And one was the cost per occupied room. And the second one was the cost per available room, because there's two different things, right? You have the cost of the occupied room, but then you have other rooms and those rooms go empty. So we knew how much money it would cost to rent a room and be able to flip it before the guest even showed up. For example, we would know that even before they stayed in the room, it was going to cost us $25 from point A to point Z with that guest. We knew that number from the moment that we took the reservation for the guest to the moment of check-in to the moment of checkout. We already had that cost figured out. So we knew it was, and this is just an example, $25. So we knew that if we sold that room for $100, we would make $75. Okay. Now that didn't include all the other expenses such as electricity and water and all that, but it gave us a good starting point as to what our opportunity or profit was with those, costs. So pools are kind of the same thing. The best thing that you can do if you're not going to do that full profit and loss, and we'll talk about profit and loss later, guys. But let's say that you don't want to do all that work. The best thing that you could do is create the following two things: is a cost of service from point A to point Z. And then you can have an average cost of the service after all the expenses. So let me break it down a little bit. So I'm going to talk about cost of service first. And this one is going to tie into your fixed costs. So think of it, before you even go service a pool or even go quote a rate, you should know what it costs you to clean that pool with your fixed cost. And I know that a lot of guys just kind of tend to think, okay, I'm going to quote whatever, like $90 sounds like a lot or $200 sounds like a lot, whatever it is that you quote. But the problem is, if you don't know what the cost is, how can you even quote a rate? How can you quote a rate before you drop that net into that pool or even before you apply any of the stuff that Bob taught you? So the first one is, figure out what that cost is and what are the costs associated with cleaning that pool.
Yeah. So guys and girls, if you guys aren't doing this, I suggest that this is the first thing that you do. You have to know your cost. It's like selling something without knowing what it costs you. Imagine selling a pump for like $900 when it really costs you $1,100. And we're not saying, hey, look, you go to SCP or PWP or wherever you're buying your products and that product costs you X amount of money. Not that you don't know what it costs you when you're selling it, but you really know what the true cost of it is, right? How much, the gas it took you to get there, right? The energy it took you to load it up, the gas for you to deliver it, right? For you to spend the time to buy the parts, to check all those things, all that should factor into your costs. Exactly how much that pump costs you. And that's why there's a markup on it. And that markup needs to exceed what your cost is in order for you to be successful, right? In order for you to pull a profit. And then the question after that is, how much of a profit can you get?
So here's the thing, guys. If you are doing pools, here's what I suggest that you do. And, first figure out what your fixed cost is going to be for the service. we can tie it into figuring out the cost of service. So, we're talking about fixed costs. Those are going to be the costs that don't change on a monthly basis. So you want to figure out the cost before you show up to the pool. If you look at, having a truck payment, and so let's say that you have 50 pools and a truck payment of $500, then it already costs you $10 to clean that pool, and you haven't even showed up, because in order for you to be able to go service that pool, you have to have a truck, and that obviously is a cost. So if you have insurance on that truck and it costs you $200 a month, that pool now costs you $14 a month to clean, and you haven't even showed up to clean it. So you're $14 in the hole. And you'd be surprised at how many other things you have to take into consideration to figure out your fixed costs. And I'm going to say it again, you haven't even showed up to do the pool.
Yeah, you say that, and my head starts to think, telephone or cell phone bills, business insurance, web costs, route software, invoicing software. And there's just so much more fixed expense if you rent a space or have a building for your office and your storage. And the list just continues to go on.
Like an example, Zach, for you obviously have employees and you pay them by the hour. So, your cost is obviously going to be higher than me if I service 50 pools and I'm doing it by myself. But in either scenario, you have to figure out what it costs, because if I know that my fixed cost is $40, would I go out and would I quote $80? Probably not. There's tons of things that you just don't think about right off the top of your head. So before you even clean that pool, you need to know what that cost is.
Yeah, look, everyone, you better make sure you do this, because this is the number that you need to use to be able to quote a rate. That's going to allow you to make a profit. It's really simple. And for those areas where the rates are lower, the $80 to $90 pools or $100 pools or whatever it is, you're going to want to have this number. It's a number you need to have before you quote. Now, remember, like Edgar is saying, this is only taking into account the fixed costs. You need to figure out your actual costs. But if you don't want to do all of the work, at least you just need to know that number, because that's a realistic number. So if you're not, you're going to a pool and you're thinking, especially, again, I want to touch on this. If you're charging $90 or $100 for a pool, and Edgar's already talking about, if you're adding in your truck payment, you're adding in your insurance, you're adding in all these extra things that you're doing, in all reality, there's not much profit left in that pool. And if you don't have that number, and then we're not really even taking into consideration the time it's going to take to clean that pool and what your time is worth. You have to know these numbers before you go quote a service, or else you're going to regret it.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, John. You really have to know, those two numbers even before you quote that. You really have to know that number. And I think we tend to think, when we're new in the industry, we tend to think, oh, I quoted $100 and it cost me, $15 in chemical. The rest of it is profit. But we don't take into account all those other factors to even be there, right? Your license, your business license, like Zach was saying, all those other costs that you need to integrate in there. The second thing that I would compare it to is a cost per available room. So an example, let's say that you have 100 rooms in a hotel and you rent 50 of them. Well, you know what the cost was for those 50 rooms, right? It was the $25 for those 50 rooms. But you have to remember that you still have another 50 rooms that went empty, and you still need to pay the mortgage on all those rooms. So there's an actual extra cost that you need to take into account. So if I look at the pool side of it and I break it down, I have the cost to do that service. And then now I need to figure out what all the other expenses are. So like John was saying, I need to take account gas. I need to take into account the chemicals that it took to add to the pools. I need to take into account the poles, the nets, the brushes, all that stuff that is added as a cost to those pools. If you figure out those two numbers, okay, worst case scenario, guys, what I'm telling you is at least minimum figure out your fixed cost number. If you want to take it to the next level, figure out now what that second number is, and that's going to be your average cost after all your expenses. So you might have a fixed cost of $25 right? Before you even show up. But then when you take into account all those other chemicals and all those other things, that might go from $25 to $40. So now you have a little bit more of a realistic number of what it costs to service a pool. Think about it. You do the first number and you have $25 and you go out and you quote $100 and you're like, woohoo, I make $75 off each pool. And now you figure out what your average cost is when you add all those expenses. And now that pool costs you $40. Is 100 really the number that you want to be? Because now you're at $60. You kind of need to figure out those numbers and at least do that to be able to start to get on track to make sure how much profit you're making.
Yeah. And like one way that you kind of break it down in my mind is that your fixed cost is your subtotal for that service. And then now with all those added things, you're truly figuring out what that total cost is.
That's the perfect analogy. So you have an invoice, you have a receipt, and you have that subtotal number right there. That's your fixed cost. That's what it costs you for fix. And then you have the numbers that come below that subtotal, right? And those are all the other expenses. So on a receipt, it would be, you need to take into account the tax, right? In order to get that total number. I think that's a great analogy, Zach, on that. It's perfect.
I see where you're going with this, Edgar. So now, guys, you need to take into account all the expenses, not just the fixed expenses. So those are going to be the operational expenses. These are the ones that come up on a monthly basis and change. So, for example, chemical cost, gas, supplies. You need like a pole, a net, a vac head. If you have an office, you have to pay for electric, water, trash, etc.
That's exactly it. So that, they're the operational expenses that are going to change on a monthly basis. So fixed is just fixed, those that don't change, right? So your cell phone bill, your truck, your insurance, and now you're going to start to have all these, and people call them different things, John. So we used to call them operational expenses. Some people would call them general expenses. What did you guys call them in the retail?
Fixed expenses.
But you had the fixed expenses, but then all the other expenses, did you guys call them like general?
COGS,
yeah. Yeah, cost of goods sold. So, everywhere it's going to be a little bit different. So you have that fixed cost and then you have your costs or your general expenses. If you look at how you need to look at this, you need to figure out all of your fixed expenses and then calculate all your general expenses to get a really good idea on what the cost is to clean the pool. When you do this, at least now you're armed to make the correct decision on what to charge for rates. Should you be doing it all? But if you're not going to be doing it all because it's a lot of work, guys, start with these two because they're going to arm you with a better number to focus on your profits.
Can I add that on all of this, like the thing that is going to be scary is what you're really making per visit on every pool. And I think a lot of people will find that they don't have any room for callbacks, or you get that call and they say there's some algae, I need you out here to take care of it, and you go back and you brush this step. You have just eaten all of your profit for how many more visits until you come back into the positive on that pool. And you talk about, in your example of $100 and $40 cost, that's for a month of service. That's $60 that's left over. You're breaking up into, 4 weeks or 4.33 weeks, depending on how you bill. And there's no room for error. And that's why it's so important to understand these expenses, because I think people are going to realize you can't make it at certain numbers.
And on the flip side there, I want to jump into, Edgar. You say you look at each stop, or you can look at it in the other way too, is sometimes you use it for motivation. So, when we have really bad days, we're getting our butts kicked, right? And I'm looking at my phone and my schedule, and I'm looking at my stops that I have to do. And I got 17 more to go, or I got 16 to go, or 13 to go. And I'm like, oh my God. Right. And I think, but at the end of the day, what helps motivate me, and, I talk to Mom about this too. And I go, look, every single stop, $51, what we're going to be making. You know what I mean? And then you add these things and you put them in there, or, if it's $40 for you or $30 for you or $60 for the other guy, but you look at it's motivation. It's just like, look, guys, I know when I'm there, no matter what's going on, this is what my profit is per customer. This is what I'm able to make. So it helps motivate you to kind of get you through those rough days too.
It's a great point. And, guys, you break it down and you kind of might come up with a cost of prior to showing up of like $40, and you're like John said, you're charging, $100. That's $60. And then you do what Zach said, and you break that up into 4 weeks, and it's like, there's your wage. Is it worth doing the pool for, $10, $15 on a weekly basis?
Yeah, look, we just had this happen yesterday too. And Mama was like, oh my God, we have this one pool, big, beautiful home. We love it, but it's just a pain in the butt sometimes. And they got a bunch of work that they're doing there. They had like 50 workers there doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that, and all this stuff. And Mom was like, oh my God. And I'm telling her, Mom, just think about it. Oh, I have to do this. I get it. Just get through it. Do what you need to do. We're looking at it. And, we're making X amount of money. You got to remember, every single time we're making X amount of money, it's plenty good money. If you even have to spend an hour there to do whatever you need to do, it makes sense for us. It's good for us, and it's good for our customer. It's so important. We use it on a daily basis with everything we do and every decision we make, and on every quote that we have when we go out there. We understand you have to come up with, and it's not like you need to, yes, it changes, month to month, but it's not something you have to do every single day and figure out. But you need to figure out these things, these expenses, guys and gals, and go, hey, look, okay, this is what my cost is. Now you need to come up with the minimum. So you need to just come up with the minimum price that you will not do a pool for less than that price, and whatever that may be. So if it's $150, $175, I know when I'm walking to the backyard, I don't care if that pool is 3,000 gallons, or I don't care if that pool is 12,000 gallons. My minimum is going to be $175 just to get us in the backyard, just to service that account. And then when we get there, based off of the things that we don't have an idea, that we don't know about, and that's the reason why we go out there to have that conversation with that customer, is so that we can gain the knowledge or understand the things, the variables that we don't know yet prior to going there, like what type of customer is it? Do they have pets? Do the pets swim? Is it a vacation rental? Look at the landscaping. What type of trees? What type of bushes? Are there bougainvilleas? How's the equipment? Is it leaking? All these things that you got to look at, and then we go from there. So our base price is what? $175. And then based off of our experience and that interview that we have with that client or the potential client, our price increases accordingly. And then it also increases based off of size and how much time you need to be there and all that. So once you get all these numbers, and I know it sounds a little overwhelming, but once you get these numbers, and then you're able to create a baseline. And once you have that baseline, you'll know that every time you go to a pool that you will be turning enough of a profit to be successful, or to whatever profit margin you need to have in order to supply your lifestyle that you're trying to live, or to cover the expenses that you have as a business and personally. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent.
No, that's actually perfect, John. And listen, guys, if you're listening, and I know when you listen to stuff that has to do with profit and loss and numbers and all that, the switch just goes off on a lot of people. But just listen to it. And it's like everything else in the pool industry. You do it 2 or 3 times and you become good at it. And this is no different, right? The first couple of times that you listen to it, it sounds like a lot of information. By the time that you listen to it 2 or 3 times, you're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And guys, we're going to talk now a little bit about profit and loss. It's the easiest thing to figure out, but just because people start throwing a lot of, accounting words out there, right, John? Probably the first times that you start listening to EBITDA and, you start looking to, rev par and rev this and rev that, and your head just starts to kind of like spin. And then once you grasp it, you're like, oh my God, this is kind of the easiest thing. And it makes total sense. So guys, if you're listening and you're at this point in this podcast where you might go, oh my God, there's just too much information, just bear with it, listen to it, because once you've listened to it 2 or 3 times, you're going to become an expert at it. So, John, let's talk a little bit about profit and loss. So we've broken down and we're telling the guys, look, minimum, figure out your fixed costs. Next step to be, more successful is really to be able to get an average cost, because now you're going to include all your costs in there. Now you know for real how much it costs to be able to service that pool. But let's talk a little bit about profit and loss. So if I was to ask you to tell me what profit and loss is, how would you explain it?
Okay. So profit and loss, well, I would look at it as like a P&L report, right? When you say profit and loss, that's all I can think about is P&L. And it's basically the top line number, how much money your business generates, and the bottom line number, which is how much your business gets to take home or put away that they made in profit. And everything in between is the journey and what it costs you as a business in order to achieve that number on the bottom, right? So the P&L is like, it's the story of your business. It's the sum of all your hard work. Not, that might sound a little weird, but business-wise it is. Not like family-wise and stuff, but just like why we do what we do. Nobody's doing this as a hobby. You know, it's not a charity. We're not out there servicing pools for free. We're not doing it just because we love to do it. Hey, do you mind if I clean your pool for free? That's not what we're in business for. That P&L and that profit and loss is the journey, right? And it tells you how good you're doing as a business owner. You know, one thing we forget, look, when you work a W-2 job or if you work for somebody else, you're constantly being told how well you're doing. And you got a pretty good idea if you're doing well or if you're not, you know, if you're going to get fired or if you think you're going to get promoted. You have reviews, you have, you know, incentives, you have raises, you have bonuses, you have performance shares, whatever it is, you have an idea or some kind of visibility in how well you're doing. But as a business owner, unfortunately, it's the top. You're number one. And unless you're sitting yourself and reviewing yourself or, you know, having a conversation with yourself in the back, you know, going over your 1 year performance, you know, that's probably not going to happen. Right. So the only way to keep you in check or to make you understand how well you're doing and how well, you know, all that work you put in, what does it sum to? And that's your P&L. That's the bottom line. What are you getting? You know, how much money are you bringing in? All the expenses that chip away from it, every little thing that chips away from that money. And at the end of the day, how much you get to put in your pocket so you can feed your family, fund those college tuition, buy your
Thanks
cars,
for that.
and that kind of stuff, right? I threw it in there just for you. You know, that's in it's the Bible. It's the story of your business. It's the lifeline, the blueprint. It's everything. You know, it measures how successful you are, and that's the truth.
That's a great explanation. Zach, what about you?
Well, first off, I have to say, John, we do it for smiles.
Right, I'm sure. Sure you do.
Yeah. But seriously, you know, I think John pretty much covered it. And to simplify it, you know, profit is the positive amount of money that you make free and clear after selling a product or a service. And on the flip side, the loss is a negative amount of money you have after selling the product or service. And your profit and loss statement should be your best friend. You really need to get comfortable with the statement. And when you're doing all of this, keep in mind, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. And what that means is that if you aren't accurate or honest with the information that you're inputting into your books, you won't have accurate data to use when it comes to understanding the health of your company. And that's exactly what this P&L is for understanding the health of your company. And you could end up putting yourself in a bad situation financially because you aren't seeing the missing information. So it's super important to make sure that you're putting in the time and the effort into keeping this information current and accurate.
Perfect. You know, I like that garbage in and garbage out. And it's very important to have those accurate numbers. And guys, really a profit and loss, and people throw out the P&L, and I know it sounds confusing, but it's really not. So, you know, let's talk about what that profit and loss should look like and how you should have one for your business. You know, the amount of work that you need to do is going to be proportionate to the number of pools that you have. So if I talk about a guy like Zach, then his amount of work that goes into it is going to have to be bigger. But guess what? He's got a bigger company, so he's going to be able to have people help him with that. If you look at John, it's just the two of them, and then they can have a complete pulse on what's going on, right? So they're not going to have to track every single expense. They're not going to have to worry about the amount of hours that either one of them work because they're not going to have a problem with overtime because it's just them two. So as a business, you should have a profit and loss, and it's simple, but so scary at the beginning because you're not used to it. But all the profit and loss is at the top, you have your income. In the middle, you have your expenses. And then at the bottom, all you have is this number, whether it's positive or negative. If it's positive, you made money. If it's negative, you didn't make money. That's it. That's all the profit and loss is. for at least for us. And for bigger businesses, they're very complex. They're very all that. But for us, it's very simple and very simplified so that you don't have to stress about it. But you have to have one, guys. And other than that, the only thing that you're doing is guessing. And I tell you this, there's a lot of people in our industry that come in thinking it's a great industry, but then they don't do this part of the business. And Zach and John, tell me if I'm wrong, but then they get disillusioned and they get burnt out and then they leave the industry. But it's not because of the industry. It's because there's no work on this side of the fence.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's what I'm saying. You need to be able to look at this and understand. I mean, the front end of the business is what I like to call it. The front end, the face we put out there, the image we put out there, the service we do, the repairs, the maintenance, all that good stuff is very important. But the back end is what makes or breaks you, because none of that matters if the back end isn't kept up or if you're not making a profit. None of it's going to last. Nobody's going to continue to bleed money. And a lot of people get into it thinking that, oh, hey, I do this or do that or do it this way or that way and everything's good. And then eventually 6 months down the road, they're bleeding so much money and they're not making it. And they all of a sudden they hate the pull and tree because, look, I'm busting my butt and I'm doing this, doing that or whatever. And it's just not making any money, And I think that's what, if we get smarter at the beginning or even now, even midway through our journey, for those of you that are listening that didn't just start out, this is going to be a game changer. This is what makes those days when you're going to pools, because we've all had them, like, oh my God, I got X amount of pools, and it's just, I don't want to service pools today, right? I feel like shit, tired, or I just had a bad day, or I had a bad interaction, or this pool's just destroyed, or whatever. If you understand this portion of it and you get it, and you know why you're doing it. I have a beautiful family. I have 4 kids at home. This is why I work my ass off every single day. This is why Mama works her ass off every single day. We do it for a purpose, right? And that's more important. So all this stuff. And then the only way I can support them is through my business. And when I understand the back end of it and I know that I'm making money and I can look at that and go, okay, good, this motivates me. Here I is. I got 10 more pools. I'm making X amount of money. I can get through them. I can do them. I'm going to keep doing it. So it's just hyper critical. You guys, as soon as you guys start to understand this portion of the business, I promise you, you will look at the pool industry completely different, and it will change your aspect and your understanding of just about everything you do and how you quote rates. And, we talk about quoting rates and to charge more, not just to charge more just because you need to charge more, but charge more because you deserve more, because you offer more and you understand more. And then you'll appreciate it much more once you start looking into this. So
once you have those numbers, you can look at it and you can say, hey, I do 100 pools and now I have the realistic number of what it costs. So now next year I want to be able to, increase and make X amount of revenue. Well, look, now you have a target. Now you know what you're making and you can say, hey, I want to increase my revenue by X amount, but now you have a target and you have a real hard number rather than just kind of guessing, oh yeah, last year I kind of had a good year, so this year I'm going to do better. But
that's something that I fell into the trap of, and I would caution everyone else, is like you said, it's assumptions. You're making changes based off assumptions. You ask someone, how much does your chemical cost a year? Oh, about $7,000 or whatever. How much is this per year? Oh, about this much. How many pools do you have on route? I think 52. Like, you can't grow your business based on assumptions. And that it took me a long time to realize that, because like you said, when you're coming from when it was just me and Justin, I had a full pulse. I was the one at the counter making the purchase. So you really do get a good idea of what's going on. But then as you start to grow more and you start to add more work moving pieces and more people to the picture, like, you have to get rid of this running your business on assumptions and get really comfortable with knowing these numbers.
Cue Edgar.
Cue Edgar, right?
I thought I got dropped or something.
Oh, John just doesn't miss a beat ever, huh, Zach?
No.
So, what's that, John?
Nothing. Cue Edgar. Go.
Keep Edgar. Go. The beauty of podcasting sometimes in technology. So, Yeah, I agree, Zach. It's, you can't go off of assumptions. And really, if you want to be successful and you want to be a true business person, this is a part of your business you're going to have to learn whether you like it or not. And so this is a part that we want to change. And I'm going to repeat it again. I know it's a lot of information. I know it's a lot of things, but the more that you listen to it, the more it's going to make sense. I was just trying to break it down to give the guys something simple that they can look at to least start to get them in the right direction. Here's one of the things, and John was talking about it, that we're going to be doing, and that is going to be a training program to put all this together. And here's what we've done is we basically created a software platform that you're going to be able to use to do this. So let me explain what the training is going to be. So we're going to do, it's probably going to be like a 4-hour seminar training. And what it's going to have is we're going to talk about the business setup, right? And we're going to talk about soul. We're going to talk about LLC. We're going to talk about protecting yourself. We're going to talk about doing all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about some of the strengths of the industry compared to the others. We're going to talk about billing. And, Zach, you and I have talked about this, but all the things that your program should have to make your billing work for you and not against you, so that you're not in a situation where you're 2 months behind because it's all this extra work. So we're going to kind of go through that, talk about your billing, all the things that it should do to make your life a lot easier. Then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to cover accounting topics. So today we talked about fixed expenses, we talked about operational or general expenses or costs, capital expenses. But what we're going to do is we're going to break those down so that it's easy to understand before we get into any of it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the cost of service method, and we're going to use the average cost method. And so we're actually going to have a software where you will have homework and you will have numbers from your business, and you could decide whether you just want to do 1 month or you want to do 12 months. There is work that has to go into it. But once you enter all that data into this system, it's going to give you your cost of service. It's going to give you your average cost. And then what it's going to do is it's going to automatically create a profit and loss. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how simple a profit and loss is. And just kind of like the guys were explaining it, you're going to have, your top, your middle, your bottom. And at that bottom, you're going to see whether it's a negative or a positive. So like Zach was saying, you need, true, accurate data. It can't be garbage in and garbage out. It has to be true data to help you do that. And by the time that you're done with this course, guys, you're now going to have actual numbers that you can say, these are my numbers. So the next day when you go to work and you're going to go quote a rate, you're going to know exactly what your cost is. So the other thing that we're going to do is, that software that you use, once you take the course, it's going to be yours. You can log in, you can track your expenses on it if you want. The other neat thing that we're going to put to the bottom of it, which, John, Zach, and I have been kind of trying to break our heads how to make a better system for you guys to be able to get like terms of service and rate increase letters and drop letters and all that. There's going to be a section in there where you're able to download all these documents so that you can use them in your business. So you're going out, you're quoting these rates, but also you're giving them the terms of service and really building and establishing yourself as a professional company. So it's going to be probably, like we said, that 4-hour class. Zach and I were kind of talking about it, trying to figure out the time frame. But by the time that you're done with this, you're going to have a solid foundation on your numbers. So we're kind of still working on the platform. We're still working on that. We'll probably announce it on Wednesday. Zach, if we do the live, we could probably that day talk about registration and all that. But that's really our goal, is to now give you not just a water chemistry and a repair side, but give you the strength over to the business side. Because really what we want you to do is be successful financially as well. My boys went quiet. Zach, John?
Cusack.
Agreed. We're going to have to use that from now on. Cusack. Q John. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Exit, stage door 3. or did nobody catch that because you're too young?
Look, I'm super excited about this class. I think it's something that we need as an industry. It's just a tip of the iceberg. We have a lot in store for everybody. When we post this class, I highly, 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 highly recommend everybody to sign up for it. It's going to be worth your while. I promise.
And we've been getting Zach. So Zach and I have talked about it. So we talked about some other things, and we talked about, like an interviewing class for those of you that are kind of in that stage. And there's really a lot to the interviewing size and learning. But Zach, I got a message from one of the guys the other day that was saying, hey, you guys should talk about retirement. You guys should talk about health insurance. And those are all huge, solid topics from the business side that nobody ever talks about.
I mean, pretty much anything from the business side, I think, is really under-discussed, if that's even a term. And I think there's a lot of just basic principles within all of these things that we can bring into the pool industry that will elevate all of us, and it will elevate the industry as a whole. And like, the thing is where I'm at today, and, I'm very comfortable in my P&L and I love it. But I wasn't always. And, I'm not some college grad. I think I slept through one semester of college, and that's about as far as I made, even if I even made it through the entire semester. I barely skated out of high school. So it's not like I came into this with some higher understanding of numbers. But just like Edgar said, is once you do it, just like cleaning a filter, the first time you go to open that filter, it's like, what have I gotten myself into it? And you do 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And then next thing you know, you're busting them out in 30, 45 minutes in and out of there. It just becomes very easy to start to understand your numbers and really take a look at the big picture.
Hey, I know why there were pauses, because we forgot to do our sponsors or the commercials.
Oh, wow. I think that one's going to fall on me. Holy cow.
So that's what you're waiting for. Right?
Guys. Hey, guys, let's take a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll continue with John and Zach. How'd you like that voice, John?
Perfect.
Cue sponsors.
The Hyper Pole from Ultimate Pool Tools is a pool care pole designed by pool professionals for pool professionals, featuring precision crafted carbon fiber and stainless steel construction. Go to ultimatepooltools.com or Instagram at Ultimate Pool Tools. Introducing Pool Invoice. Pool Invoice is pool billing software that was created specifically for the pool service and repair industry. It was developed for our industry and only our industry. Pool Invoice was built with recurring billing in mind. You can print, email, text invoices, or even send via WhatsApp. You can add recurring or yearly charges, accept credits, and set up autopay. You can even see when customers have seen the invoice. It even has a customer portal where they can log in and see, print, and pay invoices. It has all of your customers' information on one page, so you don't need to search through hundreds of invoices looking for the one you need. Just go to the customer's profile, and it's all at your fingertips. It's currently in beta phase, so anyone can use it for free. Just go to poolinvoice.com and request an invitation at the bottom of the page. Pool Invoice was made for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pool Nation Live podcast. We're talking to Zach and John. We're talking everything profits today. Guys, I have a question for you. So I got, Haas is going to be a sponsor for us, and I just got the first version of their sponsorship announcement. Should we kind of play it as to see what people think, or should we save it for when it's final?
Cue Hasa sponsorship.
Okay, so it might not sound that great, guys, because I'm going to play it off my phone, but let's see.
2021 is the year of the Pool Pro. HASA is here to support pool pros with the purest and highest strength liquid sanitizer available. HASA SaniChlor provides fast, safe chlorine performance without adding any cyanuric acid or calcium. HASA gives you the best cost per use solution for shocking and daily sanitizing, and is in stock. Look for the new HASA Rewards app coming soon. Go to HASA.com for more news, educational videos, and product information and literature.
All right, John, Zach, thoughts, quick.
Love it.
Cyanuric. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell she's not in the pool industry, right?
I heard that and I thought the same thing. I was waiting to see who was going to say something.
She's from a different market, John. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's perfect.
We just need to get her the cyanuric.
yeah, Hasa has the same lady who does the commercials that we do too. That's kind of cool.
Hey,
Same person, right?
They hired the right person.
Right.
So,
Perfect.
all right, guys. Now that we're back, we've kind of talked about all these numbers, and we're kind of have all that in our heads. Let's get some final thoughts here. Zach, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So understanding what it costs you to provide a service is, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do for your business. And then the next step, once you understand what it costs to provide that service, is to figure out how much money you need to charge for that service. And this is going to change for every individual person depending on what their goals are. I've said it time and time again, sit down and think about your future and your plan with your business. For example, if you just want to make a good living, have a good job, and do it yourself, your cost to provide service is going to be much different than the costs for someone who wants 1,500 pools on route and to have a team of 35 people. Therefore, the rates charged might be different. And this is why it's really important to put some thought into that plan. If you say, I'm going to be the most premium service in town with all of the features, I'm going to add borates, I'm going to add enzymes, monthly phosphate treatments, I'm going to do 3 filter cleans a year, I'm going to vacuum that pool, every square inch of it, every single visit, and have a 24-hour turnaround time on anyone that has an equipment problem. What is that going to cost you? It's going to cost a lot in materials and time, and even other resources like additional personnel or building space and so on. So you really need to start thinking about these things and start understanding your numbers.
Yeah. And the other thing, Zach, is I think one of the things that we don't do, and we need to figure it out into this equation, is I don't think people put a dollar to their time. I think as we get into the business, we just kind of, and John has talked about this before, it's the one thing that we have, right? It's a time business where you just put in all this time. But do you really have a number for your time? Is your time worth X amount of dollars?
Priceless.
Yeah, and on that note, like, your time doesn't start and stop the minute you put the truck in park and turn off the keys and open the door and put your foot on their driveway. Like, it's the time it takes to, you sell that job and you've got to get the pump, like the time to go to distribution, or the time to order that to your shop, or the housing of inventory. Like, you have to put a value on it. And like, one extreme example is, I was having a conversation with someone one time, we were talking about more of the repair side of things, and they're like, you really need to be billing for every minute of that 8-hour period, because when we leave the shop for job 1 and we're en route, that's costs associated to job 1. And when we get in the truck and head to job 2 and we're en route and then we've got to go pick up a part, that's all costs associated with it. So theoretically, in a perfect world, you should be billing for every minute, because you're paying for every minute of the day to do these services and sell these products.
That's a great point. Great point. John, final thoughts.
I'm going to go back to kind of goals and what Zach said. And instead of getting off like the expense thing and the whole P&L, we get that. We talk about that. This is something that you guys just absolutely need to do. But the truth is, as a business, if you're not aiming at anything, you're not going to hit anything, right? So if, you got to figure our journey when we start, or whatever we're trying to do, there's a start point and there's an end point. We're all looking at, like, at the end, I want to retire, or I want X amount of money, or I want this car, I want these many homes, or I want a boat, I want a third home, or whatever it is, right? You have that journey from where you're at now into whatever that end is and whatever that goal is. Of course, we all know the quickest way from one point to the other is a straight line. Throughout that journey, there's a bunch of little, zigzags and waves and like turnoffs and different roads that you can take. And that's what the P&L kind of explains to you. And it kind of shows you and tells you, hey, look, you're veering off course, or you need to kind of fix it here. You need to kind of fix this here, and kind of put you towards more of a straighter line to get to your goals. I'm a firm believer that regardless of whatever you do, you've got to set goals. And those goals need to be attainable, but they can't be too easy and they can't be too hard, because 1, you don't want to disappoint yourself and not attain those goals, but 2, and then also you don't want to set a goal and make it too easy where it's just not fun, or it's not, it doesn't motivate you or make you become better. We'll get a whiteboard. This is what we have. get a whiteboard and do your P&L, take this class, do whatever you need to do, find out your business wholeheartedly, the whole back end of it, and understand what really drives those wheels. Figure out where your sore spots are, where your bleeding is, and throw up a goal on that whiteboard, and then set up a time frame. And I promise you, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you will be a much more profitable business, and you will love what you do that much more because you're actually winning at it, because nobody likes to lose. And at the end of the day or the end of the month, if you're looking at that P&L or you're looking at your bank account and you have less money than what you started with at the beginning of the month, you lost that month, right? And you have to figure out a way to get on the winning side of it. So listen to this podcast again and again and again. Like Edgar was saying, like Zach was saying, these terms are a little foreign right now, but just like it was when you first got into the pool industry, when I first got into it, we're talking about pH and alkalinity and this and that and whatever. I was like, oh my God, I have no idea. Or when Zach said, when you first crack open a filter and you're just like, holy crap. I think my first filter clean took me 2 hours.
You're not the only one.
Maybe 2.5 hours. And I can't tell you how many times I had to open up that belly band and close it back up again and get it to not leak. I cannot believe, that thing leaked every single time. I could not get it to not leak. You know what I mean? It was frustrating. But nowadays, it's just like, if it leaks, there's something wrong. There's no way it leaks. I'm done. It's zipped up. It's done. I'm in and out, and it's bam, we're good to go. And it's the same thing with this and like anything. These are just little terms that you might not be familiar with, but you read them enough, you do a little bit of research, and you understand what they are. They will stick, and they will make sense. You just it's repetition. You just got to keep doing it over and over again, and it'll just stick in your head. And this is what will make you a better business or a better pool service company.
John, you hit on something that deserves this. That I just have to do this. I'm going to tell after this. I'm going to tell you what it was.
Thank you.
You just nailed it really hard when you're talking about what your targets are, what your goals are, and that if you don't track them, you're not going to get anywhere, right? You're not going to make it in that straight line. And so it was just straight on. You were talking about that, and I'm like, that's the perfect explanation. It's like you have all these numbers, but you need to have a target. You need to have the goals so that you can put those and obviously be successful. My thing that I'm going to tell you is I know that it's overwhelming at the beginning. I know it's something that you're not comfortable with. And when we're not comfortable with something, we tend to try to procrastinate and push it off to the side as much as we can. But I am going to tell you this. The quicker you attack it, the quicker you grab the bull by the horns, the quicker you're going to be able to turn that business around. The quicker you're going to know the numbers, the quicker you're going to be able to set targets. And like John was saying, you're going to see those profits, and you're going to be a lot happier when you're going out and you're doing your business. Because one of the things that we use to measure success is how much money we make. And if we're not making enough money, we're not happy. You're not happy with that business. You're not happy with the job that you're doing. So, I hope that you at least go back and listen to this podcast, listen to it a couple times, listen to all those terms that we talk about with regards to fixed expenses, operating expenses, costs, all that kind of stuff. It's exactly like John said at the beginning with the pH and the this and that. And now if you talk about pH, you can talk everything about pH. But if you go back to the first day that you started, you were overwhelmed. And it's going to be the exact same thing with the numbers and the business side. So the question is going to be, what is your number, right? What's your profit number? What's your number? And you should know that. And the moment that you know that, you're going to be able to set the targets and put yourself into the right path. So Zach, John, as usual, I want to thank you for your time. I know we went a little bit longer on today's podcast, but I think we have a lot of great information. So I hope that you guys have listened and enjoyed. Zach and John, thanks for your time. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Till next time.
See you next week.
Bye, guys. Pool Nation, all rights reserved. No part of this podcast may be reproduced in a verbal or nonverbal way. May not be distributed. It may not be distributed in any social media platforms or transmitted in any other forms or any other means, including recording or other electronic or mechanical methods without the prior written permission of Pool Nation.
Thanks for listening to the Pool Nation podcast, a member of the Pool Nation family. You can listen to us live every Friday here at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You can find us at Pool Nation or PoolNationPodcast.com, on Facebook, or on Instagram at pool.nation. And to find more info about Pool Invoice, the billing software built specifically for the pool industry, go to poolinvoice.com. Before you go, this is what the pool industry has been waiting for. PoolmanUniversity.com. It's the first platform dedicated to learning the swimming pool service and repair industry, a pool service community where you can connect and find videos on business, service, water chemistry, and repairs. See you there at PoolmanUniversity.com.